Let me tell you something about globalization's pace. Basically, a starting point has been in the 15th century with the early movements of trade across Asia and Indian Ocean, and this is called Globalization 1.0, and I'll explain to you why later. Then there has been a rapid growth in the early 20th century with advances in technology and telecommunication, and this is Globalization 2.0. And probably the last, but most important globalization is the one 3.0, the one we're witnessing today in the 21st century, which started from the third millennium onwards. And the globalization 1.0 has basically shrunk the world from size big to size medium. The one 2.0 has shrunk the world from size medium to size small. And the one we're witnessing today has shrunk the world from size medium to size tiny. And it has basically made the world a global village and has made each and every one of you a global citizen. Afterwards, there are some key factors that drove globalization. It's first technology and internet, the ease of interaction and communication. Then there are the transfer costs and speed of transport. By 1920s, the ocean shipping costs fell by half, the airfares fell by 85%, and telecommunication fell by 99%. Then we have the end of the Cold War, because during the Cold War and the World War I, the countries introduced protectionist economic policies, they closed their borders, and there was no open market or no global market. But with the end of the Cold War, then the global market emerged, and now we have liberalized markets that we call global markets. And also global problems have caused migration of people, their movement, and that it has also brought governments together to solve global issues. Additional factors are the diffusion of knowledge, so that an invention that pops up in a country can easily get to, the information can easily get to another country so that they can implement the same or can also practice the same policies or something that is useful. Then we have the movement of people, of capital, you know, the migration of people to another country to find a job or to flee a place of danger. But I want to emphasize the movement of capital. First, it has been like the money now flows in seconds. It has never flown quicker than now in the history of mankind. And it has all happened because of the electronic transfer, which means less cost per transfer and a much quicker transfer. And also the rise in perceived investment, so that the investors are investing in the developing countries and are going there because there's much room for investment. Then also international NGOs and agreements have brought governments together for solving global issues, and that's also some sort of world shrinkage. Then very important, like really important, are the multinational companies, because they have been the ones who have actually somehow urged the emergence of the open markets, because they wanted to outreach to more populations, because more population means more consumers, and that's what the companies look for. Then secondly, thirdly, it's because of outsourcing, so the companies have gone to other countries because of cheap labor force, then because they could find workers with a lower wage than the domestic workers. Afterwards, there are 5 empirical dimensions of globalization. First one is technological one. The second one is the cultural one you see here down with the McDonald's sign, which is basically some sort of homogenization of culture. Then the political one and the ideological one. But probably last but most important is the economic globalization, which has totally given another shape to globalization as a term. Its main factors are knowledge, trade, finance, and movement of labor, and some of the other aspects we'll cover in the following slides. So basically, to know whether globalization is good or not, whether it's successful or not, we can measure by the gross domestic product, or GDP, which is the value of all finished goods within a country's border in 1 year. And what you can see here in the graph is that if you look at India and China in the 60s to 90s, then you can see that their GDP has doubled for only 20 years, while this required US, if you can see graph 150 years. 150 years compared to 20 years. So all this has become possible thanks to globalization. And then the second measure index is the industrialization, and the third is human development index, which according to UNDP report from 2003 to 2013, it has increased for 35% thanks to the globalized world we have now. So there's a very heated debate whether the impacts of globalization are good or bad. So is globalization a good or bad thing? Well, there are many positive sides, but also negative ones. So I'm just going to tell you the good and bad sides, and then probably you can decide for yourself whether you think it's good or bad. The good changes is the diversification of products. When we're in the global market, more innovation and more creativity is put into practice because they have to survive the competition. So they have to be more creative and they have to be more innovative. And then we have more opportunities to choose from because there are many markets. We have a almost unlimited range of opportunities and products to choose from. Then also the developing countries are able to react to the benefits of current technology much more quickly. For example, Apple was made first in the US, but then it spread to China, to India, to Balkans and everywhere without having to we ourselves to develop them. And that's the beauty of globalization. And the third one is more efficient markets because there's an equilibrium of what the sellers are willing to sell for and what the customers are willing to buy for. Then there's also some sort of stabilized security. Since a country's economy largely depends on another country's economy, it's much less likely that there will be conflict between those two countries. And also there is some more power being created instead of compartmentalized power sectors, so that the decisions that are being made actually involve all the people and are for the benefits of all. But globalization, if there's no democracy and no mutual trust and no inclusion of all the nations, then all the positive changes disappear. Then there's also a debate whether increased competition is good or bad change. Increased competition lowers the prices. When prices are lowered, this means more consumption. When there's more demand, the companies produce more, so this means more production. Then the profit from the production goes for expansion. Expansion means more jobs, and more jobs means economic growth. But unfortunately, this cycle isn't true for all the nations, because for the developing countries, it's very hard to survive in the global market, because their prototypes haven't yet reached the quality to survive in the global market. The bad impacts are the outsourcing. While the companies are giving jobs to lower wage workers in another country, they're actually stealing jobs of the domestic workers. Then we have the exploitation of labor and human resources, where in MNCs, for example, workers are working in inhumane conditions because MNCs want to maximize their profit and to sell goods with lower prices. They have no insurance and they're working in inhumane conditions. And as I mentioned, global competition means risk for developing countries. Then we have overuse and abuse of natural resources. What this means is since demands are higher, then also they're always trying to produce more and more, but without thinking about the consequences in the future. And since MNCs have gained power during globalization, they're influencing political decisions, and since they're so strong, they have low accountability about the environmental damages they're causing. Then there's some say that there's some sort of increasing inequality. But actually the graphs I have presented here show that the countries that have actually accepted globalization are the ones who have prospered more. And you can see in the second graph that China, India, and Bangladesh, who once were some of the world's poorest countries, now are competing in the global market thanks to international trade and international business, which came as a result of globalization. So what can we do now? Is to basically we have to know and we have to be aware that globalization is irreversible. It's irreversible because the world needs more information, more technology, technology, there are higher demands, and we simply cannot get back to the starting point. But what we can do is to minimize the negative effects by changing how and where credit is concentrated. This means putting more credit and more aid in the developing countries and to help them to be able to compete globally. Then we have to become inclusive of all nations. We have to achieve universal competition through the spread of knowledge, through education and training in the developing countries so that they become skilled workers and that they can actually establish factories in their countries without having the foreigners go there and give them aid. And the fourth one is to strengthen the fair trade movement and the anti-sweatshop movement. There's actually the fair trade movement which gives aid to the undeveloped traders and gives them assistance, but still this needs to be strengthened and also to spread out to the undeveloped and developing countries as well. So what we see here is a map of all the benefits and the bad of globalization. But it's actually, if we come and think about it, is that it has affected many nations, and almost all of them. As it has progressed, some countries have made greater benefits out of globalization, the richer countries especially, but the developing countries as well have dramatically increased their GDPs and economic growth. And actually now in the world of globalization, no country, not even the countries which are the poorest in the world, can afford to remain isolated from the globalized world. So every country should seek to reduce poverty. So the international community should endeavor by strengthening the financial system, give aid to undeveloped countries. And on a final remark, it's essential to know that the course behind the globalization cannot be stopped. It's irreversible. But what we can do is to essentially make sure that we include all the nations